Tighten your lines as we get ready to sail the seven seas on the Political Pirate Podcast. Join Captain Ted Yoho and the salty dog John Martin as they search far and wide for the greatest treasure of all, the truth. From local Florida news to nationwide stories and the globe beyond, we've got it all mapped out. Now here's your hosts, the salty dog John Martin and Captain Ted Yoho.
Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the 3Ps, the Political Pirate Podcast, with your host, the old salty dog here, John Martin, and the captain of our ship, as always, Mr. Ted Yoho. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, John. How you doing? You looking mighty dapper there, and hope you had a great weekend. Got plenty of rain, didn't you?
Yeah, we got quite a bit. I had a busy weekend. I had a lot of different things that I was doing, mostly family-centered and working on my yard when it wasn't raining and all. I got about 2 acres that I just got to get back under control. So
that's right. The warm weather's here. Ward must have been up there doing the Ward rain dance.
Absolutely. Well, we start out the show with a little bit of sad news. They're very sad in a way. I heard just a few minutes ago that another one of our soldiers that was attacked and was wounded in that situation of when they first started. They have not identified the person yet, but has succumbed from their injuries. So I think that brings a total now to 7 actual deaths on the American side. 2 Israeli soldiers were killed in Lebanon over the weekend as well. Yeah,
that's always a tragedy. I mean, it's just always so sad. You know, people that are serving the nation in the military wearing the uniform, you know, they're willing to give up their life for the liberties and freedoms that we have and, you know, the values that they hold dearly. And so they're willing to put their life on the line. And unfortunately, those sometimes get lost. Our thoughts and prayers do go out to those folks. I
guess, in a sense, good news could have been very tragic, but apparently we had a terrorist attack in New York City. But of course, Mandami is not calling it that. But they had by his definition, a white extremist, and I'm not saying they weren't. I don't know anything about the group really, that was protesting in front of the Gracie Mansion where the mayor of New York lives. And they 2 or 3 came and threw some types of IUD type devices there, explosives. I don't think anybody was actually injured or certainly not killed by them, but they've arrested 3 suspects. One of them you can clearly see on the video. And apparently they have, even though the Mandami is not calling it a terrorist attack, it's like a hate attack. I'm not sure what the difference is, but they appear to have strong connections to the Middle East family in both, I think, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Turkey. Believe.
And Turkey, yeah. It's not a terrorist attack, right? That's right. You know, and unfortunately, and I hope I'm wrong on this, I hope this is not a sign of things to come, but things are getting more inflamed around the world as we're seeing, and it's just a tough situation, and how do we get out of here? It's American leadership and focusing on the basics. We're going to talk more about that. So over to you, John.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, on the good front there, we're still up here on the right side of the ground and trying to preach this message of educate, motivate, and activate people. And we need you to get part of the team and support us and move it forward. So you'll see a little moniker appear there, right there. Contact Freddie. Make that call. Help us push this cause forward. We absolutely need you.
We sure do, and we appreciate anybody's support and all the support. Share this message with your emails and let people know to come on here, and we'd love to hear your comments. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to start out with some news that has been going on now for really a few years, but certainly it's starting to come to a head beyond the Iraq war, and that is, and we're going to use an NBC story as a template, but President Trump has said that he's not going to sign any more legislation until Congress passes the SAVE Act, basically the Voter ID Act. Now, it passed the House. It's still waiting to be taken up in the Senate, and I don't believe they've even actually taken it up there. Ted, what are your thoughts? I know you're for the SAVE Act, but what are your thoughts about where we are right now and what the holdup is?
This sounds like Groundhog Days again. I mean, this is a bill that should not be controversial. I know you've got some clips to play on, having an ID. This is just something that's kind of standard protocol in America. You should have an ID. If you're old enough to vote, if you drive, have an ID. And I just don't understand why this is controversial and why this can't get through the Senate. And any senator that's blocking this, they need to be thrown out of office. We've gotten to a point in life in this country, actually around the world, John. As I travel around the world, you've got to have an ID for virtually everything you do. So this should not be consequential or, controversial at all. The ability, the privilege, and the right to vote is something that we all should take very seriously, and we should work to preserve that. And I just don't understand this. And they're talking about the filibuster again, and this is going to be a showdown, unfortunately, in the Senate of not forcing this vote, and I think it's a big mistake.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it is deja vu. And here's the thing that's really crazy. And we'll play some clips, as you said, we've played before, but they're as pertinent today as ever. But all the polling, from CNN's poll to Fox poll to any poll you want to see, there is not a single poll that doesn't show a vast majority of Americans across the political spectrum, across racial spectrums, all this stuff, support voter ID. There's really, I think, 95% of Republicans, like 75, 80% of Democrats, over 50%, 60, 70% of Black Americans, Hispanics. Even when you look at just the generic overall poll, it's close to 85% that support voter ID. If any other issue had that much support, you would think it would pass.
It would fly right through. The Democrats ought to be behind this. This is Punxsutawney Phil coming out and seeing his shadow. It's, they're going to play the race card. Give me a break. You've got the clips here where the guy, Ami Horowitz, is interviewing people, and it is not a racial issue. This is about election integrity. Get over it, pass this bill. And again, any senator, especially on the Republican side, that is hesitant and doesn't want to pass this, throw them out, because it comes down to politics. They don't want to offend anybody instead of looking out what's best for this nation, to preserve this nation. And so,
I don't have the video clip of it, but I think his name is Ossoff, the senator from Georgia. He's campaigning right now, and he's holding events in Georgia, and you're required to have a couple of forms of ID to get into his events. And when reporters specifically asked him on that, he basically looked at him like a deer in the headlights, turned around and walked off.
Yeah, really. How do you defend that? Even if you call congressional office, you've got to give them your name, where you live. You've got to have some kind of connection to that office, so they're not going to even talk to you. And this is just a silly argument, and it becomes a wedge issue, and that's what they love to do, because if it's a wedge issue, you can call racism or xenophobic, and just all that garbage that people are fed up with. So
yeah, well, the president did make one comment that I understand where he's coming from, but I'm kind of tired of hearing this from any side. And that's when he said, well, I'll close the government over it. It's a core belief. I get it is a core belief, and I get what he's saying, because the government's going to be shut down anyway if we don't get control of how people are voting. But I'm a little bit tired of the idea, well, we'll just shut government down. If maybe shut it all down and we'll start over. I don't know if we could, but I don't know what your thoughts about that are, Ted.
Well, again, they don't care if it shuts down. They get paid. Of course, Trump doesn't care about that. He's got the money. He doesn't worry about that. But the congressmen and senators, it can shut down and life goes on for them. But it's for all the people that get a government check, is the working people that get a government check, and those that truly are dependent on a social program for assistance. Those are the ones that are going to be hurt the worst. But as far as congressmen and senators, they could care less because the funds keep coming in and they keep traveling.
Now, the reality of the idea that the president, quote, wouldn't sign any bills is and I'm not saying it's just a fake threat, but the way the law is, if I understand it, is if it passes both houses of Congress, the president, if he doesn't sign, if he says, I'm not signing it, it becomes law in 10 days. Now, he could veto it. That's a different situation. But if he literally takes no action, if I understand it correctly, it becomes law in 10 days. But the veto aspect of it, here's my thoughts in general about that, Ted. And what the heck are they doing anyway? You know what I mean? As far as, I don't want to see the people not get paid and all that, but really and truly, Congress is probably the least worked group of individuals I've ever seen.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to dispute that. Going back to the veto, he can veto that, and Congress would have to go back and override the veto. And I don't think we've seen that under President Trump, where he's vetoed anything that I recollect. Do you remember any?
Certainly not this term. I don't think he did in his first term either. Really, I don't. Nothing stands out. But here's the thing: to me, if you think about it, all the Congress really has to do is pass a budget. Go up there and do regular order and pass a budget. Now, I know it's a lot more complicated than I'm making it sound, but they could just pass a budget and go back to the House, really. I mean, we don't really need a lot more laws. We just need them. Matter of fact, I'd like them to trim about 10% of the laws every year for the next 100 years. But they basically just need to pass the budget. When's the last time, Ted, they actually passed the only thing they really are required in a sense to do or should be?
Real budget? I can't tell you when they had a real budget. It's one of those things I've told you before. If we pass this budget, everything, we pay off our debt in 7 years. And then it would never happen. It was just always aspirational. But you're right. If they would pass the budget and then do the appropriations, the 12 appropriations bill, and get them out on time, they could go home, because that's really all they need to do, other than what you just brought up. Get rid of these worthless bills, or get rid of bills or appropriations that haven't been reauthorized. Get those off the book. Clean that stuff up. But they don't. They just keep adding more stuff on there so they can put a framed picture on their wall of a red line, which a red line means your bill was passed and signed into law. Some people have a bunch of them there, but they're insignificant. They're not going to change the course of America, and they just dust collectors are what they are, and they gum up the system. And I agree with you. And this is where DOJ really was effective at what they're doing, and there's still a government DOJ office up there. I walked by it the other day. It's in the Eisenhower Executive Building, which is incidentally just a great old architecture building, very well designed, but there's a DOJ office up in there. And I think that's really what they need to do, is go through these programs and get rid of them. And then the other thing, John, is send back, do a devolution of the federal government. What I mean by that is take the things that the federal government is doing right now, send them back to the states and say, this is yours. We're not dealing with this anymore. And I think if we did that, government would run a lot better because you're putting it closer to the people. If it goes back to the states, people in that state has to hold their governor and a legislator more accountable, and you get the federal government out of your life.
Yeah, well, I just had a thought in there, Ted, and this is probably, some people will jump on me about this thought. Of course, you sparked it. It's your fault. And I'm not really necessarily advocating for this, but can you imagine Trump coming out and saying something like, all right, y'all going to shut the government down. We just will cancel everything. I'll just run the show. We can't really run elections because there's nothing for Congress to do. We're not going to be able to afford an election. We can't pay anybody. So I'm not going to run for a third term, but I'll just stay in to the end of my term and we'll just dismiss Congress and the Supreme Court and everybody else until that's over. And then I'll let y'all deal with it. How about that?
Yeah, really. Wouldn't that be wonderful? There has to be a shock in American politics. And I don't want it to be a violent shock, but it's just a wake up. You know what would be neat if the American people, that's our job, educate them, is vote everybody out.
I haven't played the video in a while. Maybe I'll pull it back up. But, I really believe there'd be one vote that pretty much 100% of Americans would be for. And that's that I got a video of a cat flushing a toilet. If we could just take one vote, I know we'd get rid of some good people too and say, okay, we're just going to vote to flush the system and start from scratch with our elected officials. I believe at least 95% of Americans would go, shh, myself.
Can you imagine? I don't know how many bills are on the that we have enacted, but it was like when Kevin McCarthy was running for office. He was telling me, he goes, well, Ted, he goes, he's running for speaker and he wanted me to support him. He goes, well, we passed over 700 bills as Congress. And I'm like, well, Kevin, I said, that doesn't impress me. I said, do the American people need another 700 bills? I said, how about getting rid of 700 bills? And of course, he and I weren't on the same page.
Well, I've talked about this before, and Florida now has been controlled by the Republicans essentially for 20 years or so now. And you get and a lot of these people I support, by the way, that have come back to our district. And this is the same every district. I'm not picking on them, and they're not. But when they first go up there, their first time, whether it's a House member or Senate, Florida has a rule that you can only sponsor 6 pieces of legislation. Now that doesn't mean that as far as your bill, it doesn't mean that it gets passed even out of committee, but you can only do 6. Well, a lot of these freshmen will come back and boast about, well, I got 2 out of my 6 actually passed, or I got 3, or I got 1, or 1 even went to the floor, that kind of thing. And I want to ask them, well, how many did you stop? Or how many did you take off the books? Because that's really why I'm sending you up there. I'm not sending you up there because I think, my God, what we need is just a handful of morals and we'll be straight. But they come back eager to tell me how their bill either got passed or at least made it out of committee. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, no, it's funny out there. And you can just watch them because they sit and they'll self-promote what they did. And, you look at the significance of the bill they passed. Does it really move America forward, making us stronger, making us more self-sufficient and prosperous? Does it free up the American people? Does it get rid of regulations? Or is it just a messaging bill that, it got passed, got signed into law? Some of the more significant ones really is naming a post office, which I've done. And I kind of used to laugh at that until I got asked to sponsor renaming a post office. And it's in Interlaken. And it was a young African-American that volunteered to go to Vietnam. He had jumped on a grenade that got thrown into their camp, and he saved pretty much everybody else, but he sacrificed his life. And so I was honored to pass a bill to recognize him at the post office in Interlaken. So, I think those are significant bills. And I used to laugh at them until I found out the meaning of why people are asking that. Now, there's some that get passed because they're on the radical left and people want to pass them for that. And I'm like, those are not good ones. So.
Yeah. Well, I may ask you about this, Ted, because I know agriculture was a big thing for you when you were in Congress and certainly in your previous work and all. I've maintained that the Farm Bill, and I'm not talking about any one particular one, the Farm Bill in general actually shows everything that is wrong with government. And I'm a pro-agriculture person because it literally has something for everybody in it. It has something for the biggest of the big corporations right down to someone in line with a grocery cart full of food stamps to buy or selling food stamps illegal. It literally has, I'm not saying they're not great pieces of it, but the way that legislation is done, it had to at least surprise you a little bit that it's so complex. It's
Oh,
not,
it
you
is.
think the farm bill is about saving a farm or about helping American farmers, but it's really so broad that all that gets lost in the shuffle. But am I
It,
wrong?
you know,
And there's other bills like that, but I'm just saying
oh,
that.
pretty much all the bills, the big spending bills are like that. And the USDA is one of those, the farm bill. And I was shocked to see what was in it. One of them is crop insurance for farmers. Now, it de-risks growing a crop, and I think we're also okay with that. But I saw in practice when I was practicing as a veterinarian, people would plant, say, a crop of corn in Florida, and they would plant the rows or the seeds far apart, so they weren't really putting in there to get a high yield. So they're spending less money on seeds to put a corn crop. They wouldn't fertilize it or irrigate it, and it failed. So they got paid back the insurance, and that's just fraud. And there's two counties in Florida that were the highest fraud. I think it's Jefferson and Holmes County that had the highest fraud in agriculture in the United States of America. And it was consistently year after year. And it was these people were defrauding the government and the American taxpayers. And so I argued and I talked to my clients, my constituents, if you could get this crop insurance, and the farmers were only paying about maybe 10% of the insurance. Government was paying the rest of it. And I'm like, why? I mean, if the farmer is benefiting from this, why are they only paying 10% if they want the insurance? And so I talked to my constituents. I said, would you be okay with paying 50 to 60% of the premium? And they said, I would pay pretty much the whole premium to get this kind of coverage because it wasn't that expensive. And I'm like, and I brought that up in committee, and I said, oh, no, you can't do that. And of course, then the lobbyist groups would come and argue against me, like, well, you can't do that. You know, this is a good program. And so there's a lot of that in there. Once you get it going, you get all these outside interests that want to protect it. And it could be pared way, way, way down. And of course, food stamps got put into the farm bill to pass the farm bill. And they said that's the only way it can get passed. And I'm like, take it out of the farm bill and let the farm bill stand on its own merit. And they're not willing to do it. But that's what needs to happen, John.
Well, you mentioned food stamps. I always remember back when Gingrich and Clinton were, in office, and they did some good things together, but they were talking about this welfare to work deal, right?
Yeah.
And one of them was that you'd have to work and show that you were willing to work or able to work. You'd get cut back on your food stamps at some point and that kind of thing. And the biggest of the big corporations with the food industry and some, big industrial farming went to both Gingrich and Clinton and said, you got to take this out of the bill because they were making a huge chunk of their profits off of food stamps.
Absolutely.
They didn't want it. And now these are big Republicans and stuff like that. They didn't want any cut in food stamp program whatsoever because it was ching-a-ling in their pocket. That was
well, you got your big grocery store chains, you've got Walmart, you got Costco. The amount of money that goes through that food stamp program, it's in the billions and billions of dollars. And again, for people that legitimately need that, I'm all for that. But for the scammers out there, like I told you before, I know there was over $22 billion in fraud just in the food stamps. Of course, we saw what went on up in Somaliland up there in Minnesota, how much fraud was up there, and again, in another social program. And that's where these programs, they need to be really vetted and and pared way, way, way back. They really do. And it would save us billions and billions of dollars.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We're going to come back and dig into this Saving the Save Act, if you will, in just a little bit. But before we do, I just want to remind you to be a part of the show, support the show, lift up the show, become a sponsor of the show. Call Freddie, that little number, contact Freddie, make that call. Take us to break, Ted.
No, look forward to talking to you back. We got several things to talk about. Not that there's not a lot going on in the world, but we want to bring you up to speed on a few things. See you in a minute.
For the first time ever in a public setting outside the Heisman Trophy ceremony in New York City, three legends are coming to Gainesville. Join Steve Spurrier, Daniel Werfel, and Tim Tebow together with their Heisman trophies for the Legends Gala at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill on Monday, March 30th. Enjoy an unforgettable night of Gator greatness while supporting the incredible mission of Isaiah 117 House. Tickets are limited. Get yours now at FLLegends.com. That's FLLegends.com. Don't miss your chance to be a part of Gator history.
Well, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the 3 Ps, the Political Pirate Podcast, featuring the old Salty Dog and the Captain Ted Yoho. Normally, we're broadcasting on Mondays from Spurrier's Gridiron Grill, but both of us had other obligations and couldn't get in there today. We appreciate the sponsorship of the Spurrier Gridiron Grill. And I just want to make a public service announcement because you saw this celebration that's coming up of the 3 Heisman winners, and Steve Spurrier is very much alive, ladies and gentlemen. I keep seeing all this clickbait stuff on Facebook, and the latest one had the man graveyard dead. Thank God it's all fake news. Spurrier is alive and kicking, and you can see him at that celebration at Celebration Point, Spurrier's Gridiron Grill.
You know, I'm glad you brought that up, and I'm glad to hear Coach Spurrier is still with us. But the social media today is so toxic, and we were driving home last night from Jacksonville, and there was a podcast of John Kennedy with AOC on Jake Tapper on CNN Political Town Hall, and it just goes on, and it was all fabricated. It was just all fabricated. It was good content, but it's like I did my checking on it when I got home, and it was just all AI done. It was just, and so there's so much of that garbage out there that we have to be careful of where we get our source of information. And that's why it's important to watch the 3 Ps and get your information here from the old.
Well, I can assure you, if I was creating an AI image of myself, I'd look a lot more handsome than I already do.
That'd be hard to do, John.
But you mentioned Senator Kennedy, who I'm a big fan of. I'm sure you are too. Well, he has suggested that they could do this SAVE Act in reconciliation way, and some are saying kill the filibuster, and some are saying that they need to do a talking filibuster. But Majority Leader Thune said something to me that's interesting and a bit sad to me and makes me a little bit angry. He said this about the talking filibuster. He said, in the throes of the talking filibuster, we can't really reopen the government. That would hinder that. But he said, and the Republican conference is not unified enough for it. That really struck me. So what he's saying, if I'm interpreting this right, Ted, is that the Republican senators, elected Republican senators, aren't unified enough to do something that would approve the SAVE Act that roughly 80 to 90% of the American people are for. I don't understand it.
I don't understand that either. The way I interpreted it is he was saying that the senators wouldn't support a filibuster. This is an issue that shouldn't be even controversial. Bring the bill up, vote on it. If it fails, the Democrats are going to be the one that failed it. And it's an issue, you said, both sides, and we know both sides want this passed. So let them bear the brunt of their not voting with their constituents. That's what needs to happen. Bring it up for a vote. And then let it fail. Let the senators get the backlash from their constituents, and then bring it up again, and you'll probably see it pass. But you need to do something. Instead of holding it off and playing these silly political games, it just is crazy.
Yeah, well, speaking of crazy, old Chucky Schumer, who is the minority leader.
Now.
Let's hope we can keep him as the minority leader, so to speak. Yeah. But he said that if Trump's not going to save this or the signing bills with the SAVE Act until it's passed, he said there's going to be total Senate gridlock. And then this is a direct quote from Mr. Schumer. He said, Senate Democrats will not help pass the SAVE Act under any circumstances. Any circumstance. A bill that's 75% Democrats polled said they're for, 85% of American people, and like 95% of Republicans, but they will not help in any way, Ted. That's what he said.
Jackie, I hope your days are numbered in the House.
But he might ought to listen to Jasmine Crockett, of all people.
Of all people.
Jasmine Crockett, lost her primary bid. We talked a lot about that on Friday. But I want to play this short snippet of Jasmine Crockett telling you who is to blame for her losing her Democratic primary race in Texas. This is who she blames. Play it.
This is what Republicans like to do. And so they specifically targeted Dallas County, and I think we all know why. So I want you to enjoy yourselves, but I won't be back tonight because I have no idea of when we're going to get results, and I fully anticipate it won't be until tomorrow.
Well, Ted, there you have it now. I know you've been a Republican a long time. You've been elected as a Republican congressman, so it's your fault. You stopped. So we'll give you credit and blame at the same time that you stopped Jasmine Crockett, because she said this is what Republicans do, cheat her out of her election. So you must be to blame.
I believe that was a Democratic primary, wasn't it?
She got beat with somebody more liberal than her, if you can believe that. By the way, Texas, that's what you're voting for if you vote for this Tallarico fellow, whatever his name is. He is more of a liberal and a progressive communist than Jasmine Crockett, and that is saying a mouthful.
He's more dangerous because he's more refined and doesn't go off the deep end like she does. But just listen to what he has said, and you don't want that kind of stuff. I don't think Texas will. I don't think Texas wants that or is ready for that, and I hope they never are ready for that. And so, Miss Jasmine, you lost because you need to look in the mirror. It's because of you. It's your crazy policies. It's the way you flip back and forth from talking in the hood to being very educated, and then just using all the race cards on everything. It's your fault. So see you later.
Well, we're going to play back-to-back video clips of the same video, but different portions of it here. So I'm giving our producer the heads up. We're going to play it as quickly as we can after we play this other one. But we've played this before, but this is is it Ami? Is that how you say his name? Ami Horowitz?
Yeah, Ami Horowitz.
This was about 5 years ago, but I think it's still true today. He was in Harlem, and he's talking to white voters to start with. He goes to Harlem afterwards. He talks to white voters in the first video about why it's racist to have black people required to get a voter ID.
Before you go to that,
and then I'll turn to you. Then he goes to Harlem and interviews actual black people about it. But you wanted to make a comment, Ted. Go ahead.
Yeah, before you go to the one where he's interviewing the white people about the black voters, listen to the racism of these young white people. And that only has to come from their college professors or the way they were educated in school to say, well, they can't really use the internet because they don't know how to, meaning they're dumb. They don't have it in their districts, which means they've been suppressed. And it's just garbage. I would be very offended if I was a minority, especially a black, and I had a young white person that probably has no black friends and probably has never been challenged in her life or his life outside of their storied life upbringing. Never had a struggle for anything, and it's just so much garbage that these people talk about.
Absolutely. So let's play the first one, and you'll see exactly what Mr. Yoho is talking about.
Those laws are racist?
For sure.
Do you think it suppresses the African American vote?
Definitely.
Tell us how.
Because they're less likely to have state IDs.
Minority voters are less likely to have the kinds of IDs that have been described or required.
These type of people don't live in areas with easy access to DMVs or other places where they can get identification.
You can always get IDs you do over the internet. Does that also make it difficult for black people in particular?
Yeah, you have to have access to the internet. You have to be able to pay an internet service provider for certain fees.
Do you think that's harder for black people to go online?
Well, I feel like they don't have the knowledge of how it works.
A lot of people have smartphones, but you might not have data.
For most of the communities, they don't really know what is out there just because they're not aware or they're not informed. I also think there's a repression of
Well, Ted, you're so right. There it is. White folks saying that black folks just ain't smart enough to get an ID or to work that old knob and tube internet thing, or heaven forbid they could look at a cell phone or something like that, or simply ask for directions. It's insane.
That really is shameful, and I'm embarrassed to be. I'm not associated with those people, but to have that kind of ignorance. I mean, that's just ignorance, and looking down upon another group and thinking, well, they're black and they're just ignorant. They don't know how to use it. They don't have the resources. Highly offensive. Highly offensive, and that has to come from liberal professors and liberal high schools teaching that garbage.
Yeah, well, my wife is mixed. I got a daughter that lives with me that's black, and my granddaughter is black, and both my wife and my daughter actually work in healthcare, so they got badges on with their pictures. Of course, they got every ID you need and passports and everything else. But my little 5-year-old granddaughter, she picks up the IDs and is wearing them and says, "Look at my ID, Papa. Look at my ID." And
you say, take that off. You're not supposed to have that. That's
what
racist.
am I supposed to tell her? You're too dumb, child, to get an ID. What are you talking about? But then check this out, because this is the same interviewer going from where he was interviewing those liberal white folks to Harlem and interviewing black people and asking them these questions. Check it out.
Now I'm here in East Harlem to ask black people their thoughts on what you just heard. Do you have ID normally? You carry ID around?
Yes, I have state ID.
Do you carry ID?
Yes, I do.
Do you know any black person who doesn't carry ID?
No. Everyone that I know has an ID. Why would they think we don't have ID? That's a lie. Why would they say that?
Do you have ID?
Yes.
Because I have my ID and my friends have their ID, so we know what we need to carry around.
Everybody that I know have ID. That's one of the things you need to walk around with New York with, ID.
Do you know any black adult who does not have ID?
No, I don't.
Is it a weird thing to even say that?
Yes, it is.
What is this, some type of trick candy camera?
I know, right? That's the only thing I brought with me.
Those are legit IDs. I heard a lot also that black people can't figure out how to get to the DMV.
Really?
What does that say to you?
I know it's that, on 25th Street.
Do you know where the DMV is around you?
It's on 125th Street and 3rd Avenue, I believe.
You know how to get there?
Yeah.
Would you have a problem getting there if you had to get there?
No.
I know these sound like silly questions. You know how to get to the DMV?
Of course.
You know where it is?
Yes.
You can get there?
Uh-huh.
No problem.
No problem.
Just checking.
Okay.
And I also heard a lot that black people, especially poor black people, have no access to the internet, can't figure out how to use the internet.
That's just stupidity, honestly. Everybody has access to the internet. Even a little kid can figure out how to work the internet.
I had access to the internet for years.
You know how to use it?
Ted, when I watch that, I'm sitting here thinking about doing some kind of racist like joke thing where I go up because I got black family members and all that. And I'd say, you don't know where the DMV is. You might know where the jail is or where the corner bar is, but you couldn't possibly know where the DMV is. I mean, how ridiculous is that?
But that's what the Democrats are saying. It's racist. I'm reading about the filibuster. And I can understand why they don't want to bring it up, because the majority needs to be there. Needs more than the votes to prevail during a talking filibuster. Intensity, commitment, and energy matters just as much. The Senate rules puts the burden on the majority to maintain a quorum of 51 senators. If you lose your quorum, the Senate adjourns and the talking stops. What's more important is if it goes on, if they lose the endurance, one Democrat can get up and end it. So it's all for naught. Again, it just comes back, vote the bill. And if it passes, it passes. If it doesn't, the ones that vote against it are going to have to pay for that.
Yeah, well, I got a solution for that. It's probably not constitutional. We just have the Democrats pick their guy to stand there and talk, and we'll just put Trump up there. And 80-year-old Trump will outlast any of them young guys. I'm telling you right now, I believe he could sit there or stand up there and talk for the next week and a half without a problem.
Yeah.
But maybe that's Trump derangement syndrome. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit about how bad TDS actually is. Because there's an event that happened this past weekend, and it really showed me just how bad it is. Jesse Jackson, had passed away, and they had his celebration. Well, the day after he passed away back in February, his son, Jesse Jackson Jr., said, he said, well, I'm just going well, I'll tell you what he said, and then we'll play a short video of him. He told this was the day after his dad died. He told people, don't, if you're coming to the celebration, don't bring your politics out of respect for my father, Reverend Jackson, and the life that he lived to these ongoing services. Don't bring it to him. But I want to play this video, and this is Jesse Jackson Jr. at church the next day after the memorial service where all these former presidents showed up. Listen to what he has to say. And
yeah, it's pretty strong.
It is. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. We'll play I'm sorry. We're going to play the Kamala Harris. Set it up real quick. She was not president, but what she said kind of represents what you would hear from the rest of the Democratic speakers that day. But check it out, and then we'll talk about that, and we'll play the Jesse Jackson Jr. video.
I predicted a lot about what's happening right now. I'm not into saying I told you so, but we did see it coming. But what I did not predict is that we would not have Jesse Jackson with us right now to help us get through this. So let me just say, I predicted a lot about what's happening right now.
I mean, I know thank God she wasn't a president, but she was so trivial during that service for Jesse Jackson. Love him, hate him, however you feel about him. He was a significant political presence for a generation and a half, basically. And the man deserves a modicum of respect, no matter how you feel about him. And I actually like the guy. I didn't always agree with him, but she trivialized it, in my opinion. And you could go through all the rest of them, from Barack Obama and everybody else, and see that they basically might have been more eloquent about it, but basically it was an anti-Trump rally.
It really was. And Kamala Harris, you said it was trivial. I've never heard her say anything that wasn't trivial. I mean, she's never said anything of significance. And we know where Barack Obama and Jesse Jackson stood. I mean, they didn't like each other, but he goes in there and pretends he's like their best friends. And, he sure didn't give them that kind of support when he was president.
Absolutely. Well, and now I want to play, excuse me, I'm battling a little cold, ladies and gentlemen, but play Jesse Jackson Jr. Now, remember, earlier I said the day after his dad died, he warned people, if you're coming to the services that are going to be happening, don't bring your politics with you. And then I told you what happened. Now this is the very next day after all these ex-presidents and Kamala Harris spoke, what he said about them speaking at his father's event in church. Check it out.
Yesterday, I listened for several hours of 3 United States presidents who do not know Jesse Jackson. He maintained a tense relationship with the political order, not because the presidents were white or black, but the demands of our message, the demands of speaking for the least of these, those who were disinherited, the damned, the dispossessed, the disrespected, demanded not Democratic or Republican solutions, but demanded a consistent, prophetic voice that at no point in time ever sold us out as a people. And it speaks volumes about who the Reverend Jesse Jackson was. Our message has already been delivered today. I can see it all over my mother's face. Rise, Jesse, rise. Give
I got to
Jonathan
tell you,
Jackson.
Ted, I don't know much about Jesse Jr., but I really appreciated what he had to say there, and I think he was spot on.
I don't know much about him either. I've worked with Jonathan Jackson, and his Jesse Jackson Jr. was praising his brother. So I need to go back and listen to what Jonathan Jackson. He's the congressman. Yeah, he sounds like a upstanding guy that's talking for the right reasons and trying to carry on the message.
Yeah, and if you want to know, we played this before, but I'd like to play because I want to play what Donald Trump said about Jesse Jackson's passing from the White House. And then we're going to play a video that a lot of people might not want you to play, but I want to play it. Jesse Jackson, in his own words, talking about Donald Trump before he actually became president. But let's check out Trump on Jesse Jackson.
Expressing our sadness at the passing of a person who I knew very well. Jesse was a piece of work, I want to tell you. He was a piece of work, but he was a good man. He was a real hero, and I just want to pay my highest respects to Reverend Jesse Jackson. He's a good man. He was actually, as you got to know him, he got better and better all the time. But I knew him well long before becoming president, and he really was special with lots of personality, grit, and street smarts. You would say Jesse had serious street smarts, right? A very important ingredient to life, I will tell you. He was gregarious and someone who truly loved people and a force of nature. He was somebody that we're going to greatly miss. And on behalf of everyone here today, I know you join me in sending our condolences to the entire family. Had a great family. I want to begin by expressing...
Well, Ted, President Trump said more about the man, Jesse Jackson, and his impact on the country and the world, really, for that matter, than all of those presidents, ex-presidents, and wannabe presidents said at the man's actual service.
No, he really did. And I think what he said was, he was heartfelt. And I think, the thing about Trump is he doesn't say stuff, just to be politically correct. I mean, you'll know where he stands on it. And I think it was a very earnest and a very respectful message.
Yeah, and now I want to play Jesse Jackson, the man himself, and this was back probably 20, maybe 30 years ago, talking about Donald Trump and what Donald Trump meant to him and the things he was trying to do. Check it out.
Yeah.
Friend who has, he is deceptive in that his social style is of such. One can miss his seriousness and his commitment, but his success is beyond argument. When we opened this Wall Street project and we talked about it, he gave us space at 40 Wall Street, which was to make a statement about our having a presence there. And beyond that, in terms of reaching out and being inclusive, he's done that too. And created for many people a comfort zone when I ran for the presidency in 84 and 88. And many others thought it was either laughable or something to avoid. He came to our business meeting here in New York because he has this sense of the curious and a will to risk to make things better. And so aside from all of his style and his pizzazz, he's a serious person who's an effective builder of building with a builder of people. Last year, he was a part of our workshop, of our panel workshop on what are the challenges and opportunities. And so this, a year later, Donald Trump, for a few minutes, challenges and opportunities to embrace the underserved communities. Donald Trump.
I mean, there you hear it from the man himself. He called Donald Trump, what'd he say? He said Donald Trump's a serious person. And I love what he said, that he's a builder of people. That's exactly Trump, the builder, but he's also a builder of people. And that was Jesse Jackson, not me.
Yeah. And why do you suppose Trump was at that? I think that was back in the 90s. He wasn't running for political office. He wasn't looking for favors. He was generally involved, and he trying to make things better for everybody. And, Jesse Jackson said what needed to be said, and Trump said what he needed to say. And I think that's the message that people need to take away is, you look beyond politics and you're looking at people, and let's make it a better country. And I think he did that, both of them.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to give you one more example of Trump derangement syndrome, but this brings us back to current events, the Iran war. This was Bill Maher. I got to give him credit. Bill Maher really set this up well. He had Adam Pencilneck Shifty Schiff, who, by the way, he's a senator now. He's not one
unfortunately,
governor, thank God. But yeah, senator. But watch what Bill Maher does to Adam Schiff, and he just exposes everything. We only got about 30 seconds of it, but check it out.
Statement from the administration. The president had the constitutional authority to direct the use of military force because he could reasonably determine that such use of force was in the national interest. That's too vague for you?
Totally vague.
Okay, because that's from Obama about Libya.
Well, Obama made the argument initially that he could go into Syria without an authorization. I and many others pushed back on that argument. Ultimately, he did not go forward with going after Assad, even though Assad was gassing his own people, because he thought.
So what Bill Maher did there, Ted, was he had Schiff on, and he talked about Donald Trump in his opening comments and Iran, and saying, y'all are saying this is an illegal war and all of this kind of stuff. He said, I want to read you a quote from the president. And he read this quote, and it was all about, and then he asked, that specific enough? And Schiff goes, no, that's vague. It's illegal. It doesn't make any sense. It's totally vague and everything. But then Maher said, but that was Obama's quote going into where Gaddafi was. So, I mean, my God, man. So, and then Schiff defends it after that, goes into a long defense of it. But when it was Barack Obama saying it was clear as a bell and wasn't vague and going into Libya and bombing Libya, who was not an imminent threat to the country. They were falling apart already, and Barack bombed them, but here you have Schiff going, yeah, that's vague, doesn't make any sense, it's illegal. And he said, well, that was President Obama.
Yeah.
You got to give the man credit.
Around. They tried to do the same thing in Syria, is go in there and justify that. We stopped that. I mean, Republicans and Democrats stopped it. We did good there. Anyways, Adam Schiff, well, California, you get what you vote for, just like New York does.
Was he actually a representative at the same time you were?
Yeah.
How was
that? We never crossed paths. I mean, he was on. No, he was on. I don't know why, but on the Intelligence Committee. It's scary to have that. Him and what's his name, Eric Swalwell.
Eric Swalwell. Well, he certainly took advantage of that. He lobbied or got lobbied by Fangbanger or whatever that guy. He's crazy, man. Can you imagine him actually getting elected governor in California? And he might do it, but that's going to be a scary. Wake up, California! My God, man.
Yeah, they'll put another billionaire tax and increase the influx of people coming to Florida and Texas and other free states.
Absolutely. Well, I want to give you, we got about 5 minutes left in the show. I want to give everybody a quick couple of updates on Iran. They have picked a new supreme leader. Now, he may be blown up by the time our show's over, but he's the son of the late supreme leader and considered a contender. Essentially, what he's been doing, is my understanding, is he ran the counter offensive against the protests here recently. He kind of led the way in their killing, and he's kind of behind the scenes controlling a lot of stuff. So he's the real deal as far as he's not a symbolic leader. He's actually got his hands dirty. What are your thoughts about that in general?
I think it's going to be the same, if not worse, than Khomeini, his father. His father was a theological leader too. His son does not have those credentials. The other thing is, the first Ayatollah, we should never fall in where we're giving this, passing it from one generation to the other in an aristocratic type of situation. We should never do that, because it just breaks the mold of what we're trying to do with the radical Islam that they have, or the theocracy that they have. But yet here it is. They broke that by putting him in charge, and they're trying to carry on the same message. And he was the one. He'd been groomed in the military, although he never saw action. They kind of protected him, but he was in charge of the IRGC, which is we've got them, the Iranian Royal Guard. We've got them deemed as a terrorist organization. He was in charge of that, and that was a group that was killing all the people in Iran. 30 to 40,000 people have been slaughtered by their own military, and they want to put him in charge of the country. This is a bad mistake, and it's a bad step, and it's definitely terrible for the people of Iran that want liberty and freedom. And there will not be a decrease in conflict if he goes in there.
Well, if he's actually was in charge of quelling protests, you got to keep this in mind. This guy then gave orders not only to shoot people in the street, but they went and tracked people down and shot them in their hospital beds.
Sure.
That is about as low as it gets. But I want to close out the show with one more video. And this just goes back to Trump derangement syndrome as well, because Donald Trump was asked on one of his travels recently on Air Force One a couple of days ago about boots on the ground. Listen to what he says, and then we'll come back real quickly and talk about the headlines off of it. Check it out.
Send in ground troops. How are you thinking about that?
I don't even want to talk about it now. I mean, that's. I don't think it's an appropriate question. I'm not going to answer it. Could there be? Possibly, for very good reason. Have to be very good reason. And I would say if we ever did that, they would be so decimated that they wouldn't be able to fight at the ground level. A lot of negotiating leverage, maybe maximum, but we're not looking to settle. They'd like to settle. We're not looking to settle. They're on their third or fourth level of leadership, and they have leaders right now that nobody even knows who they are. They're being decimated now. At some point, I don't think there'll be anybody left maybe to say we surrender, but they're being decimated.
What are the circumstances where
So the headline, ladies and gentlemen, was that Donald Trump is saying he's going to put boots on the ground. In other words, he basically told them in that media that we are invading Iran. We're going to have hundreds of thousands of troops, forever war, and all that stuff. And all he basically said was, well, I'm not telling you what my plans are. And then they pushed him. And he said that, well, I'm not taking anything off the table, but it would have to be, it'd be really bad for them if we did, because it would mean they would have been totally destroyed if we did that. And the headline is, forever war, Trump boots on the ground. Oh my God, all that stuff. Total TDS.
No, you're absolutely right. And, let's hope that there are no more boots on the ground. We don't want to see that. We've been there. We don't want to repeat that. And so we're here. What do? You need to bring this to an end as quick as you can. And the only way you can do that is complete surrender. And that's going to be ugly. It's going to be a period of time. What we're seeing in Iraq, ran back groups, the proxy groups, they're starting to raise up again and start fighting, hiding behind the Iraqis. And, it's going to be a mess, John.
Absolutely. It is. But at the same time, Ted, I don't know that it ultimately, because I heard one person, and I'll let you close the show out after I make this statement. I heard one of the senators, I don't remember which one, a Democrat, on one of the shows over the weekend, and he was talking about whether Iran was an imminent threat or not. And he literally said, well, they weren't right now when we went in there. A year from now, they might have been, but not right now. What the heck does that mean? So a year from now, they might be able to nuke us, but they couldn't have done it right now. I mean, that's just insane. But he said it with such a convincing, educated voice, so to speak. It just, can we really be that dumb?
Death to America. Death to America for 47 years. They went from very little enriched uranium. The JCPOA went in, a joint plan or joint commission of nonproliferation, went into effect under Obama. The Obama-Biden administration has given them over $160 billion, and they're up to over 60% enriched uranium. They have an arsenal of ICBMs, and it's the writing's on the wall what they're going to do. So how long do you wait? I would prefer not to do what we did, but it's here. So now we've got to bring it through to closure, and we want it to be done as quickly as can and move on.
Well, their own negotiator, Ted, is not making a whole lot of news, said in our most recent negotiation with them that they had enough in enriched uranium, over 60% enriched, to make 11 nuclear bombs. He admitted they still had that, literally, but that nobody seems to be talking about that.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be a full nuclear bomb. It could be a dirty bomb where it blows up in Manhattan or Atlanta, any big city, and you throw out that radiation toxicity. Can you imagine how that would upset and just stop an economy? Do it in Los Angeles, do it in San Francisco and Washington D.C. Do it in Washington D.C. and you shut down the government effectively. You really have. So let's hope this ends quickly and without further life loss, especially on our side.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we hope you've enjoyed the show as much as we've enjoyed bringing it to you. Please like what we're doing, share what we're doing far and wide, give it as a homework assignment to your kids and your grandkids to watch us, help us educate, motivate, and activate people. Ted, last word, take us out.
And as you're educating your kids, ask them about IDs, if they need ideas, if that's a racist thing or not. I just don't understand it, but you parents will educate your children properly. Take care. We'll see you Friday.
Peace out, everybody.